Hey guys, welcome to the Warriors Path podcast. I'm Alan Baker, and today we're going to be talking about paralysis by analysis. And we're going to be looking at some options to build an intelligent decision making process to navigate through that to avoid getting stuck in that analysis phase. Okay, guys, today what we're going to be talking about is overcoming paralysis by analysis, thinking less and doing more. I got this question this week from a good friend of mine and a longtime student at the academy, which is fantastic. If you are out there and you are listening to this, if you have a question or a topic you want us to take a look at, get in touch with us and let us know. You can also comment in the comment section. We're trying to keep track of them, but the best way is to go to the main website and just contact me directly through the website and let us know what you'd like to hear more of, what type of content you want us to focus on. All right, so like I said, one of the things we're talking about is dealing with overanalyzing situations. And, you know, it made me immediately think of Sifu FONG. I've been training with Sifu FONG, since the mid to early 90s. It's one of the reasons that I initially moved down to the Atlanta area. And one of the things Sifu FONG commonly would say in class, and still does to this day, is less talk, more do. Because he'd catch the guys in class working their mouth more than they were actually working on what they were supposed to. And there's some profound information in that. But that's the first thing that I thought of when the student asked me this question. And it also makes me think of one of my buddies in the early 90s. And I've spoken about having the great opportunity to have a business mentor in the early 90s, had tremendous amount of influence on me, inside and outside of the martial arts. And he really took me under his wing. And he created a educational process for me. He put on an entrepreneurial school for me. And part of that was having me dive into an entrepreneurial program to start a side hustle, my own business, just to start getting experience and wisdom on that. And one of my buddies he wasn't a martial artist. He was just a good friend of mine that I had actually met at the gym. And he was very like-minded in the area of entrepreneurship. And I want to do it with you. And, I'm pretty excited about it. It was first time to dive into an endeavor like this, especially with the guidance of a good mentor. So I was like, sure, man, more company, the better. So I explained to him what my mentor was having me do. And he was going to go through the same process on his own. And I wanted to point out this because we're going to contrast the journey between the two of us. And one of the main goals that even starting the process was pointed out by my teacher, by my mentor, isn't just for money. Money is just a tool. It was primarily for gaining freedom, the ability to do more of what you want to do, and additionally, better experiences. These are the two things that he focused on when he started talking to me about, let's get that side hustle going. If you build it correctly, because some side hustles do exactly the opposite of this. But he said, if you build this right, it'll create more freedom for you in the long run, and it will give you the ability to have better life experiences. because, money is a tool and you can use that tool to do things and experience things. And he was absolutely right. And so I remember when we started doing it, one of the main things he said is, look, here's the formula I want you to follow, at least for now. I want you to think, decide, and act, to take action. And, his influence, he learned a lot of this through the entrepreneurial world. But, when he was explaining to me, I immediately made the connection to what we do in martial arts. And because that's what I am, that's what I grew up doing. And to me, it's a lot like a fight. When you're sparring with an opponent, if you take too long to make a decision, you pay for it. So you have to observe, decide, and take action quickly. And generally, the quicker you are at it, the better you do. And with that in mind, this is one of the things he pointed out too, is you don't always make the best decisions. I don't think there's a process you'll go through where every decision is the best decision. And much like in sparring, you make wrong decisions and you pay for them pretty quickly. Right in that moment most of the time. But that's the cool thing about coming up in that culture is you get used to that. I always would use the term in the academy, you become a wisdom seeker. What I mean by that is you start to develop the mindset that mistakes are going to happen. So you get to the point where you don't fear mistakes. You actually seek them out. You'll go put yourself in opportunities to make more of them. And one of the reasons for that is because of the wisdom that will come out of it. If I keep myself locked into like a cocoon of protection all the time and I don't ever take any chances, I don't ever risk making those decisions, then I never get the wisdom that comes from making them and then making the mistake, which is inevitable. You can't run from it. If I slip the wrong way or I duck the wrong way and walk right into a punch, I get immediate feedback and I go, that's wisdom. I'm not going to do that anymore. The process isn't as quick in the entrepreneurial world. Sometimes it takes a little time to realize that might not have been the best mistake, but the same premise, that's what I connected it to. And due to my background at that time in fighting, in martial arts, I understood that. So when I started to go through the process, he pointed out, I want you to do this. I really didn't have that big a problem for it. I started to lay out the process, what I wanted to do, look at the major decisions I had to make, go through my process of decision making and decide on actions and started taking actions on it. And, I really didn't have a point of reference of how good I was doing. Unlike in sparring and fighting, the process sometimes takes a little longer in the entrepreneurial or in life. So the one reference I did have is when I went back and I would run into my buddy at the gym and I'd go, hey, how are you doing? And he was still in the process of studying the type of business he wanted to do, figuring out the market, doing research, which is all important. And I was like, well, I didn't get to do all of that. Maybe I need to go back and do that part. It made me second guess myself at the time. And I went back and I spoke to my mentor, who was an extremely successful man. And he said, it'll come. We'll fix that later. He goes, fix your major items and get the fundamental wheels turning of this revenue stream. Okay, did it. And then, probably 6 months later, I came back to my buddy and, where are you at? I was like, I'd already implemented it. And what I had started to build was really a private lesson business that was additional to what I was already doing. I really didn't even look at a possibility of building it, but he helped me do it. He helped me actually build a brand around it, an idea, a concept, and after about 6 months, it was starting to work quite well. And so I ran into my buddy and I was like, hey, where are you at on your process? And he goes, well, I'm still doing some analyzing, still talking to some people. he was still frozen in the very first stages of the whole process. Long story short, it took him a year and a half to finally get that business founded and started rolling. And at that time, I had already gotten to the point where I was making enough funds coming in where I was starting to hire a couple of guys to teach lessons for me. So that it had matured to a certain point. And that comes back to the point of, don't let your mind, or overthinking, it could even be overanalyzing, don't let that freeze the process. There are going to be, in any area, there's a lot of different things you can go deep into. But there are going to be some fundamental foundations. The 20% that is going to produce a huge portion of your return, that is what we want to focus on and get those items moving forward and take some action. And thing two is, like we said, you're going to run into those mistakes, and sometimes out of the fear of mistakes, which I think is what my buddy at that time was dealing with, was the fear of making those mistakes was kind of holding him back from actually making the decision and getting him moving forward. But you've got to take action, even if it's imperfect action. Now, I commonly will go back and look at the concept of fighting. You have to take action, because if you're behind in time, you're losing. So you have to take on time or ahead of time action, and sometimes you just got to risk it. And it's imperfect, and you pay for it. You gain wisdom. I don't do that anymore. But you'll see the individuals that are willing to put themselves out there and put themselves in the fight will progress way quicker than individuals that are not. Maybe they don't because of fear, or they're overthinking it for whatever reason. So you want to be the guy that gets in there and throws the punch. Whether it's in the entrepreneurial world, your personal world, fitness, multiple areas of life. So one of the things that my buddy, last week he came with me with the question, he goes, hey, can you talk about this a little bit? And if you can, what are some strategies that you've used in life that would help me out? And so here are 10 of them that I came up with that, when I look back, helped me. So one of the first ones is just awareness of overthinking. Just realizing you're doing it. Because like my buddy, I don't know that he had someone there like I did. Like I had my mentor, my teacher, who would poke me and he goes, you're overthinking this. Go take some action. So sometimes you'll get caught up in that loop and you don't even realize it. So I think number one is just awareness of overanalyzing, overthinking. Because if you can recognize it, you can do something about it. You can say, okay, I'm going too deep on this. I'm getting caught in a loop. I've got to come outside of the loop and try to get into a decision-making process. And one of the things that helped me, and this is one of the things that I did even on that side hustle, is I set clear goals and objectives. I've talked about this before, is the difference between just having a lukewarm goal. I just want to lose 10 pounds, as opposed to a specific goal. I'm going to lose 10 pounds, but my goal initially is I'm going to just try to get 2 down in the first month, then 2 down in the next month, and I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to take in this many calories. I'm going to do it with these types of foods. The more specific you can get, the more you can lay an intelligent plan, the baby steps between this point and that point. And you can also measure your progress. So 2 months in, you could look at the numbers and go, okay, I'm moving that needle. I'm making steady progress. So you have to clearly define what you're wanting to do. You have to limit information gathering. Sometimes, and I am very guilty of this because I am a perpetual student, a perpetual white belt, self-educator. And I love to learn. I love to look into new areas or deeper into an area that I think I know, because you don't know what you don't know. And every time I look into another area that I think I know, it's like there's more there that I do not. So I can go into that loop of information gathering, but you have to be able to limit that. And to me, one of the things is to think about that 20% that we spoke of earlier that's going to produce that 80%. So that applies to me even on the information gathering process. I try to limit to the most influential 20% of what is going to affect positively my goal or my plan, whatever it is. Establish a deadline. In other words, even if it is, taking action on that business, I am going to make sure I have this incorporated and the paperwork done with the state by the 30th of next month. And I'll put that down on the calendar. I'll make a note, sticky note on the mirror, whatever it takes to remind me on a regular basis that that is coming. I have to make that decision and take those actions. So you can look at what are the major steps of what you're wanting to achieve. We're using the example of building a side hustle, building a business. What are the major steps of implementing that business and putting it into play? Of course, there's many other ones, but like we said, there's that 20% that actually gets it done. And I'll make a list of those, and those are going to be the ones that I'm going to set my goals on. And I'm going to give myself deadlines on. Break down the decisions you've got to make. Sometimes you'll look at a decision and you go, man, that's a big decision. But sometimes you can step back and break that decision up into smaller ones. You can say, what is influencing this decision? What are the multiple areas that I have to take into consideration for it? So I can break it down and then maybe put time and effort into making those smaller ones, which will lead up to that big decision. Trust your gut, trust your instincts. That feeling that will sometimes guide you, don't ignore it. I have found out in my life that a lot of times it is way more right than I am. So learn to pay attention to that and get in touch with it. Embrace imperfection. Like we said, you are going to make a mistake. It is inevitable. Failure is part of life. Failure is part of progress. And any great endeavor that you're going to achieve is going to have failure. So right off the bat, expect it and have a process of navigating failure. So when it shows up, you don't spend a lot of time focusing on it. You start moving through it and going around it. And I've talked about the 80-20 rule a few times. Generally, 20% of your efforts can yield 80% of your results. And this is a fairly common principle. It's been out there for a long time, but it is very true. And I think of this as a mind tool. When I start to enter into a situation, make a decision or anything, I'll back up, take a 1,000-mile view and go, okay, what is the 20%? Or what are those few items that are going to have the most powerful effect on this decision, this business, whatever? And I'm going to go on to seek input. I'm going to talk to my mentor. I'm going to talk to the mentors that have done it. I want to find the guys that are where I am, or they're on the journey to that point and farther enough along so they can look back at where I am and right off the bat give me advice. They can go, don't do these things. This is what I did, and I had to go back and fix it. And they can point out those 20% things through wisdom because they have lived it. They can go, look, you're worried about this thing over here on your business. Let me tell you, it's not that it doesn't matter at all, but it has nothing to do with actually getting this done. Here are your 20% items from my experience. And that is so valuable. So seek input. But at the same time, don't over-consult. Again, remember that deadline. Set the deadlines on the major fundamental legs that are going to build that table. And then number 10 is reflect on past experiences. Now, if you don't have them at the time, like I did when I first started getting into the entrepreneurial journey with my mentor, I relied on my mentor. I relied on my teachers. I looked for those examples out there of guys that were doing and creating those things. And then if you get in there into the fight, you throw a punch and you pay for it. You throw another one and pay for it. Well, right there are two examples of what not to do. So in other words, if you get in there and get in the grind, you are going to gain that wisdom as well. And with that in mind, the guys that do get in there with everything, make those mistakes. Those are the ones with the most wisdom. And so a decision-making process. This is another question that the student that I had the conversation with last week that brought me on this whole line of thought was asking about. Because I make this is actually one of the things we do in the Warriors Path program is we look at decision-making processes. What are the mind tools that you can plug in that help you make a decision intelligently? And sometimes that'll help you get through the decision-making process quicker. So this is a little 8-step process that I use, that I've come up with. Now, I've gone through many of these, and I've asked people for their decision-making processes over the years. Once I see they have one, I go, hey, can you show me that? You don't have to make this one yours. Honestly, the main thing is deciding to make one for yourself. And then using the system as a source principle, look at other sources, other systems, and take that information to build your own. That's when it becomes your system. So 1, identify the decision to be made. 2, gather relevant information to the decision. So spend some time doing some research, but don't drown in it. Number 3 is define the objectives for the decision. And for me, what is the 1,000-mile view of those objectives? So I don't want to get caught up in the details right now. I want to know that what are the 20% objectives that are going to get from point A to point B and get this decision moving forward. And then generate a list of options, because you may not always have one choice. You may go, I could do this, I could do that. Write those out. And then all of the things that might be involved with those. So you spend some time, maybe 2 to 3 things that will go along with each one of those decisions. So you have a list of options of your decision. You can evaluate those options once you've made them, and then you can make the decision. So you have a clear map in front of you or an outline of what you are looking at and the decision you're about to make. And then take action, man. Implement it. Put it out there. And then monitor and review. So it's just like throwing that punch. The review portion usually comes back pretty quick. But don't just sit there and wait on it to come back. Make it part of your process. Once I've implemented, actively go and view what the response is. Because sometimes you will see whether or not that was a good choice or not earlier, and you can make adjustments. Generally, you can always make a little adjustments or redirect your path. Okay, guys, that's what I've got today. And again, this whole episode came off of a question from a student or someone that listens to the episode. And if you have them, share them with us. Come and let us know. Remember, you can shift your perspective, change the way you see something, take action, and you can transform your world where you live on a daily basis. Thanks, guys. I'll see you at the next one. All right, guys, just a quick break to do some shameless self-promotion. We have 2 major things we're working on this year, and one is the video archives that we have on the main website. We have 3 of them, and we have really been putting a lot of effort and time into content for those archives. And additionally, we are scheduling some hosted events at the Academy in Atlanta. Most of the time I travel and I am hosted when I do my training by other individuals. This year, per request, we're trying to do more of them that we host so that we can hit more of those topics that you want to see. If you're interested in any of this, you can find information on our main website, sifuallenbaker.com. Very easy to navigate. It's probably one of the first two things you'll see when you go over there. Come and check it out. All right, guys, I thank you for listening to the show today. If you like the content and you have not yet, give us a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. It helps me grow. And also, if you know anyone out there that may benefit from what we're doing, please share it with them and invite them to come into the community and be a part of what we're doing.